Cool. So today's meeting is about game pitch goals and what is an MVP. Here's the sign-in sheet. None of you missed it, right? 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 Okay, it'll show up at the end again, I think. Uh, Announcements. We have a social this Friday, game night social. It's gonna be at 3 p.m. in Building 6, Room 113. We will probably explain where that is. If you don't know where it is, you can ask us questions. I highly encourage everyone to like bring their own board games and that type of stuff because we're a little bit strapped on that. Right now we got like a handful of board slash card games confirmed that we have as part of the club. One of our board members is offering up their Switch, and there will be at least 5 controllers, I think. So I think they have Smash. That's all people play on Switch for, right? So there'll be that. But definitely, like if you want more things, contribute, please, and you will be seeing this box of chips there as well as some pizza. So, uh, yeah, come by, talk to your fellow members, and enjoy. We will hopefully see you there. I think that's about it for announcements. Oh yeah, sign-in sheet. We're basically going to try to start up again on our raffles. So, besides like ASI stuff, which was we gotta put in we gotta put how many people showed up to the meeting, which is what our beloved historian does. Uh, we were also using each person's sign in as like a slot, so your attendance is like the more you attend, the higher of a chance you have on winning the prize of the raffle, whatever that is, when we decide at the end of the month. So please show up to the meetings, and hopefully you'll get. I don't know. What did you get last time? Some chungus you were talking about. Yeah, we find like neat little things, but yeah, there's that. But don't tell anybody we do raffles. They don't like that word. Uh, anyways, up next, now we're going to be talking about the club goals. So we introduced ourselves. And last meeting and this meeting, we're talking about what is game design. Game design encompasses all aspects that go into the development of a game. So that includes programming, art, music, sound effects, writing, gameplay, and everything else in between. So, like, I don't know if you're a shaders guy, that is part of it. Shaders guys are very impressive, by the way. You guys do incredible work. But anyways, these are the aspects we focus on the most in this club because we are the game development club. So programming wise, wow, I did not know they staggered this slide like this. Cool. So that's like related to game engines, the programming language, the game mechanics, gameplay features, user interaction and user experience, uh, and a bunch of images of Unity Godot and a stock image of GitHub. So basically, what programming encompasses version control, right? And what engine you use and what you write with. Regarding art, this one did not have a transition. That is Executioner Smo's concept art from Dark Souls. So art is character design, backgrounds, props, concept art, so on and so forth. So, if you're using Blender to get what is this image? Why is Suzanne there? So if you're using Blender to make your models, or you got like concept art of your characters like Smo and Link over there, or just environment, that's mostly art related. For music and sound effects, it has to do with soundtracks, sound effects, Foley, ambiance, and literally anything else in the game that makes it a lot more immersive. Because if you played a game that's lacking maybe any of this, you'll notice it pretty quickly. It's like, wow, it's too quiet. So, examples would be not only the music design of something like Elden Ring, but also, as I mentioned, also every subtle sound of attacks and exertions from enemies and bosses for audio cues, because it's not just visual when you're playing these games. That is a picture of how people do Foley, so they just grab a bunch of items and try to make sounds and try to make them look like other sounds in games. And I put Dark Ages there because if any of you have seen gameplay or watched Doom Dark Ages gameplay, holy crap, they went crazy with the weapon sound design. Everything kicks. My ears hurt. So great stuff. And writing. Wow, I did not know everything on this slide had transitions. Okay, cool. So writing is about story, dialogue, lore, and world building. So, for example, Dark Souls is infamous for its lore, a lot of it hidden inside item descriptions. So it is entirely up to you to figure out if you want to learn more about this world beyond what you're being told. I put Death Stranding there. I know a lot of people think Hideo Kojima is a little bit out there when it comes to story writing, but he has his own flavor to it, and I think that's done great. And for dialogue, it comes down to, like, for example, Witcher 3 dialogue options, right? Any of these could take you to a different outcome depending on how you approach your situation. But of course, you can't have it's best to avoid bad dialogue, otherwise it stands out pretty quickly. Except if you're Hideo Kojima, all the characters he's named weirdly. So that's for writing. And finally, coming back around to our club goals, I don't know why this wasn't at the start. Our goal is to teach our members how to become well rounded game designers. By understanding each aspect that goes into game development, members can better understand the work that goes into making a game and learn how to make their own. And for our club, we achieve this by hosting workshops that delve deeper into each aspect of game design, so programming, art, music, and so on. And our main thing is the game pitches, which is a hands-on experience to kind of trying to put together like your own little indie game. By the end of the semester, each game pitch team will need to present a minimum viable product. So, for example, that's say you wanted to make something like Mario, right? Your MVP would be the side scroller movement, jumping and maybe jumping on top of a guy's head, right? So bare minimums. And look, I just explained it. What's an MVP? It is a version of a product with just enough features to be usable by early customers who can then provide feedback for future product development. It's a basic version of your game with just the key gameplay features needed to gain interest in its development. So I like to think of it as like the core or the skeleton of the game. We were talking about skulls earlier. And here's a great video so I don't have to talk as much.
During the last 2 episodes, we've stressed how important it is to make your first game something small. But this is so important that this time we're going to dedicate the entire episode to it. This will serve you in good stead not only when you're creating your first game, but also when prototyping for anything else you do. In development, there's a term called minimum viable product, which refers to the smallest thing you can possibly make that'll still give you useful data once released. That should be your goal. Even when James is called in to work on a multi-million-dollar project that has a development time of 3 years, one of the first things he'll tell them is that if they don't have a prototype up in the first 3 weeks, they're doing it wrong. When you can actually play your game, you'll discover all sorts of things that you didn't account for when you were just designing the game in your head. You'll find edge cases where your mechanics are broken, or places where your game just falls apart. You'll find what's really engaging rather than just trying to build something that you hope is engaging, and you'll discover what will add the most to the experience you're creating. Okay, so you've heard me say cut and cut and cut, and that when you think you're done cutting, you're probably not done cutting, but you do have to stop cutting sometime. So how do we determine when we're down to that minimum viable product? Well, this one is a bit tough, and you're going to get better at it with experience, but the basic idea is to find the absolute minimum set of features that won't affect core development. If you could cut a feature and still technically ship your game, it's probably not part of your minimum viable product. But because this is as much an art as it is a science, let's run through some examples so we're all on the same footing. Let's start with Super Mario Bros. What do we need in order to test if the fundamental gameplay of Super Mario Bros. Is engaging? What's the minimum that we can build and test before deciding if what we have is something worth expanding upon with additional features? Well, do we need Koopas? No. Fire flowers? Nope. Bowser? Nope. Pipes that you can climb down? No. Pipes at all? No. Water levels, mushrooms, hidden blocks, extra lives? No, 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 no. So what do we need? Well, for Mario, the minimum viable product is probably one level where you can move, jump, and fall into pits. That's it. If just that much is engaging, you'll be able to add all those other features later and make it even better. But if running along and jumping over pits doesn't feel good, Super Mario Bros. Simply doesn't work, no matter how many extra features you throw in. So you've got to make sure that that core is working first. Although, in this particular case, I'd probably throw in 2 other features that aren't strictly necessary, but they will make a big difference. First, a trigger which resets the level if the player falls into the pit, just so testing is easier, and to make sure that this aspect isn't just unpalatable to players. And second, the ability to change from walking to running, since the Mario jump mechanic is so dependent on the run button. But that's it. 1 level, 3 features, and you've got a game. Don't believe something this simple could be engaging? Well, set the character to auto-run and you've basically built Canabalt. When building your first game, or prototyping a larger one, you'll find that you can strip out all of the content, all of the things that aren't rules that control the play itself, but rather elements that are created out of those rules. So enemy types, levels, different weapons, all of that can usually get cut. You might want to include one thing from each category just to test the larger rules, but no more than that, because it's really easy to get mired down in making all of that content. And the truth is, games with lots of content but without a solid foundation are rarely good. Perhaps worse, as a creator, when your game's packed with content, it's generally harder to figure out why the foundation's not working. If you test your prototype with a lot of content thrown in, it'll be harder for players to put their fingers on exactly what it is that needs improvement, as all of that content just clutters what's wrong, and they'll be more likely to tell you about bad pieces of content rather than the underlying reasons why that content didn't create a positive experience. It just adds complexity in a situation where you really need to be honing your game's core foundation. Okay, so let's try another one. Old school JRPGs. Now this one can fool people because most designers tend to think of these games in terms of content rather than gameplay. It's easy to get caught up in the story you want to tell, or the massive lists of items and enemies. But if the player has to slog through 80 hours of weak gameplay in order to access that story you've got in mind, you've done your player a disservice. In fact, that's some of what's contributed to the decline in the popularity of traditional JRPGs this decade. So take a game like Final Fantasy IV. Here, I would cut everything but the menu-based combat system. I would even cut out all the graphics. Monsters can just be words on the screen. That's really all you need to test the system. Now, many of you might object, saying, but that doesn't work. I can't make that engaging without the content. This is actually great, though. It immediately tells us that we should probably find a more robust system. Alright, let's try one more. This time, let's look at Ikaruga. Here, we could probably cut down to the color switching mechanic, an enemy which switches color randomly and shoots random bullet patterns, or maybe randomly chooses from a small list of pre-built bullet patterns, as that wouldn't be too hard to construct. Also, you'll need the ability for the player to move and to shoot, a counter which ticks upward as you shoot the enemy, and a death mechanic that simply resets the game when the player gets hit. This will get you all the player behavior you need to find out if your game's engaging. Your players will try to dodge and shoot the enemy while attempting to take advantage of the color swapping system as much as possible. That's all you need. Hopefully, that helps you frame your thinking about just how small your first project should be. Now I'm gonna give you a quick and dirty list of game genres, ordered by how difficult they are to create a minimum viable product for. And this is only going to apply to digital games. Some of these genres are actually much easier to build pen and paper or board games for. Also, this list isn't by any means absolute. As game engines change, this list is going to become outdated, but it should give you a place to start at least. So, game genres in order of difficulty to produce a minimum viable product, from simplest to most difficult. Racing game, top-down shooter, 2D platformer, color-matching puzzle game, 2D puzzle platformer, 3D platformer, FPS, JRPG, fighting game, action-adventure, Western RPG, RTS. I'm leaving out point-and-click adventure games here, as those games are entirely built out of content. So while getting a point-and-click game up and running is relatively easy, getting anything together that'll actually tell you if you're onto something engaging is a lot harder. You'll notice I'm also leaving out anything networked or multiplayer, as that generally multiplies the complexity. Honestly, I would just recommend avoiding multiplayer stuff entirely for your first game. And again, don't think of these genres in terms of the games you know. When I say racing game, don't think Gran Turismo. Think 2 gray blocks on a black background with acceleration and collision mechanics. That is all you need to hit that minimum viable product or prototype stage where you can really start to get it out there and play it and learn what's needed to improve it. You can always build from there later and add more cool features, but your game will be better off for having spent the time testing and refining the foundation of your game idea. This is way more productive than dreaming up a project which is far too big to ever tackle. Hopefully that helps you decide where to start and how far to scope down. Join us on the next episode for what to do once you're done with your game. See you then.
This video has been carrying this club for quite a few years. Anyways, yeah, there's a QR code, I think, leading to the playlist. I haven't checked it. If you are interested to find out more from this guy particularly. So there's that. Oh, all right. Cool. Now, what's a game pitch? This is the meat and potatoes of the meeting. So, what are game pitches? Every semester, club members have the opportunity to pitch ideas for the games they would like to develop for the club. After these pitches are presented, members will then join teams based on these ideas and which one they're interested in the most in regarding helping out. And by the end of the semester, at our club banquet, teams will present their MVPs and their development process throughout it, as well as have progress check-ins throughout the weeks. Again, we are not expecting a fully polished game by the end of the semester. A lot of us struggle to create a game by the end of the semester, including myself. I don't know if I've delivered one. And it's no big deal if you can't finish what you need by the end. Again, it's your personal life, school, and work always comes first. And even though this says never feel pressure to put out a AAA game by the end of the semester, just don't feel pressure to put out a game, period, by the end of the semester. I don't know if you can even make it to AAA in this time. Uh, so there's that. So, as for how to pitch a game, if you have an idea, you can submit a team lead application by February 10th. These games will be pitched on February 17th and the Friday after that as well, if we need that time, depending on how many people pitch. So, don't miss out. Prior to the game pitch general meeting, the board will speak to their applicants about their game pitch. So, what we'll do is uh, this form will be available after the meeting. What we'll do is you'll be putting which times you're generally available at, and then we'll reach out to you and talk to you to make sure you understand what you're doing and if you're within scope. Oh, did you add this? Nice. Well, yes. And more importantly, because, well, I guess because the form is here now, even though they are due Tuesday, so next week, please submit them as fast as you can, which makes it a lot easier on us. You got a question? Do we have a form for joining the club? No, I don't think so. Nah, you're cool. Yeah, I mean, there's a My Bar, but nobody uses that. Let's be real. Uh, what was I saying? Yeah, again, the form is open now, or you can do this after the meeting if you'd like. We're going to make a post-meeting announcement with a link to this as well. So if you don't fully know what to do right now, that's okay. But even though the submission for this form is due Tuesday, if you can get this in before that, please do so. That makes it easier on us. We can interview you much earlier, which opens up a lot of time for everybody else. So, what is in a game pitch? This will include your game title, doesn't have to be final, this changes all the time, your game genre, a two-sentence pitch for your game, a full summary of your game, and the gameplay features to be included in your MVP, as well as who you need to accomplish this. So, programmers, artists, voice actors, etc. And here is an example of a game pitch. It said last semester, but I said last semester because I thought it would be funny to bring this one back. Yeah. Wait, let me get the lights. This has been. Oh, yeah, it's cool, isn't it? Uh, I filtered a lot of the stuff out to cut these slides down a little bit. But yes, this was a pitch I made like a year and a half ago, and then the semester after that, and then the semester after that, and then I never delivered the game. Aw. But it was a good pitch, okay? So, the game I will be pitching is Heathen, which is a 2D Souls-like. What is the idea of this game? Well, I wanted this to be a 2D side-scroller Souls-like. General gameplay features would include structure slash posture bar, something like Sekiro, parrying. I wanted, dodging like Dark Souls, but I want the game to be difficult but rewarding. As for the lore, here was some working skeleton of a lore that I had going on where, oh, maybe you're like a former commander of a prospering kingdom and you're betrayed and killed out of fear by your own king, and then you're resurrected by a weakening goddess of death, offering him revenge in exchange for service. So what have we done so far? uh, well, we had concept art. It all began with sketches while I was bored in the class. This was going to be John Heathen. And then there was an actual concept art I did of the main character the night before I was going to pitch this thing. So it was like, oh, he kind of looks like this. Half his side is like burnt off because he's like singed by the flame. His sword is totally not inspired by the cold sword from Dark Souls 3, uh, and just general design stuff. And oh, maybe this is kind of how I wanted the moveset to look like. This would be like the main rush combo, and then we have a charged heavy attack, and so on. More things later. I was also experimenting with, if I want this to be 2D pixel art, what if I make a 3D model of this maybe, and then render it out, and then render it out with like some kind of shader to make sure it render out with some kind of shader to like really streamline the 2D sprite making process. But this idea was maybe scrapped. Oh yeah, by the way, definitely messing around with your MVP is fine, but make sure you get your actual main ideas across. Yes, that, and there was like, oh, here's some working concept art that I was working on that I never got finished. Just kidding, I did finish one whole sprite of this guy. All I had to do was open a sprite. So Heathen's inspiration, it was inspired by, as you noticed from what I wanted for my gameplay, something like Sekiro. I wanted like Sifu's combat, mainly Blasphemous for the 2D side scroller feel, with these types of respective features to it. So for Blasphemous, besides the 2D gameplay, you have like executions, Sekiro deflection, posture bars, dodging. And even though it was going to be 2D, I thought it would be cool if they had like wall running mechanics or something like that. And well, how was I going to make this game? Mainly, we're going to use Godot as our engine, Sprite for making most of our art, and GitHub for version control, and the indomitable human spirit. uh, as for what the MVP for this game would have looked like, again, all I was looking for was a playable character, maybe like a combat and a peace state, so different actions depending on what's going on. Uh, Two regular enemy types. Could have probably cut it down to one enemy type that you can just hit. I did say boss fight with several health bars, but I meant more like on the end of, again, just something you could hit, and then proof of concept that, oh, it went into phase two, even though it doesn't really do anything, just to show that it works mechanically. Basic platforming, and then death, respawn, and score loss. And for stretch goals, which is what you would do if you hit your MVP and you still got plenty of time to work on it, maybe you'd aim for a finished boss, more music, refined sound effects, interactable NPCs, consumables, cutscenes, dialogue, and everything else needed to flesh out the game. Ignored. Largely, don't think too much about your stretch goals. So if you have cool ideas, definitely write them down for yourself because you don't want to forget. But always focus on your MVPs. So, the team that I may need, for the MVP, I would have wanted 2D artists and/or animators for pixel art or more concept art, programmers for gameplay mechanics, enemy AI. I say boss AI proof of concept because again, something I just wanted to hit and show things going, and audio engineers, just for sound effects. Doesn't really have to be anything special, just something to put in there so it's not quiet. And then again, should I ever reach stretch goals or people are interested in helping out with stretch goals, I would have needed again audio engineers for refined SFX, musicians for in-game music, programmers for actual boss AI, and 2D artists for maybe an opening cinematic or detailed environments for the game instead of just gray boxes that you could jump onto. And yeah, that is, and that was my game pitch for Heathen. So please join is what I would have said if I was pitching this again. uh, but yeah, this is an example of a game pitch, a little bit on the wackier side, granted, but it goes over the main stuff you need to understand. So, this last slide here. Flashbang. Uh-huh. So, you good? Did that flashbang you too? Yeah, cool. So, anyways, that was the end of the example. So, meetings is basically over almost. Here's the club calendar of a couple upcoming stuff. Game night social this Friday. Building 6, room 113 from 3 to 5. The submission deadline is due on Tuesday next week. We have a Unity workshop coming up with somebody else that's helping us to host it. That will be on next Friday. And pitch presentations will be the week after. And more will be announced later. I think we have some things planned this month as well. So that is all. That concludes the meeting. Steam group, Instagram, cool stuff. And here's the sign-in sheet if you missed it. And that is it. If you have any questions,